Hey folks, thanks for tuning in to Max Torque Garage. I'm Mike and this is a video on things to inspect when you're buying a used vehicle. I'll be using my old Dodge Ram here because it's a perfect example of what not to buy when buying used. And before you get started or before you start looking, it's a good idea to grab a couple of things, one being a really good flashlight. You can have a creeper and a small magnet, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So to start off, when you're looking at a used vehicle, you want to have a look around the whole vehicle just to get a general assessment of condition. So this is where I would have a walk around, kind of inspecting panels. You want to have a look at door lines and jambs. You make sure everything is fairly straight and that your gaps are fairly consistent. You can look at your tire conditions, so you're looking for any dry cracks, anything like that, obvious plugs. Obviously rust around the wheel well is not a good thing. Yeah, I think give it a good once over in the Dodges. A lot of the time the bottom cabin down here, at the bottom of the box, kind of rusts out. And then same thing with down in this area, the front of the box and the doors. At this point, if you wanted, you could come around and pop open some of these doors. Have a look at your rockers. As you can tell, that one's not very strong, so probably turn around and run if that's what yours are looking like. Same thing up here, rockers, condition of the door. You can see this one's got a pretty good amount of rust on it. So that's about it for general condition. Once you give the truck a good once over, I'd pop the hood and we'd start looking at things inside the hood, under the hood. Alright, so once you're under the hood here, again, just general condition of things, looking for cracks, rust, heavy deposits of grease. Any moisture, any like fluids, things that look wet down around your engine here, that shows maybe some either coolant leaking or some other fluid, engine oil, transmission, probably not up here, but power steering, brakes, fluid, all that stuff can be leaking up here. So have a look for any leaks. Your belt condition, so your serpentine belt, which runs all your accessories down here. So you can see your belt runs AC pump, alternator, crank cam, all that stuff down in here. Sorry, not crank cam, but your fan, clutch, and whatever else you got on your vehicle. One thing I forgot to mention is I'm using the Dodge as an example here, the Ram, but this will be good for pretty much any vehicle. Having a look at your battery connections here, it's a good idea. So you can see my positive here's got a lot of corrosion on it, so that's just poor connection. General condition of your battery, if it's looking pretty old, then chances are you might need a replacement soon. The Ram here, you get your power brakes, so you can check your power brake level there. Generally there's a min-max on the reservoir, which is here. So you can have a look for that. Whichever vehicle you're looking over will probably have the same. Power steering reservoirs, again down in here. I can show you guys this. Right. So right there, your power reservoir, power steering reservoir. Check your fluid in there again. Engine oil, one thing I forgot to mention, something you should bring with you is a rag, semi-clean rag ideally. So I'll generally give it a wipe to start and feed it back down in there, come out, check your level. So this one is, well, it was in the safe zone, but now we see it's kind of peeling up there, or running down. You can see this oil is fairly new because it's not black. And on here you probably won't notice any different fluids. So if there's any coolant that has leaked past your head gasket, it could end up in here, or any gas maybe that's in there. So you should see just oil. You can pop open your air box here, have a look at your filter. Just general condition, it should be again, condition, cleanliness. If it's white and clean, it looks good. And if it's got a rat's nest in there, you know, something to think about. And you're just trying to assess how the previous owner maintained the vehicle. So if you've got like a bad air filter, your oil looks like crap, your coolant levels are way down, you know, that type of thing, it might be an indication that they didn't take care of it very well. So something to think about. Coolant level in the rad looks good, and it looks like just coolant. Sometimes people will add water to these, or too much water, so you gotta be careful about that. Transmission dipstick is back here, so you can check that. Generally, they're supposed to be running and in neutral for you to check the level. And it'll actually sometimes tell you on the dipstick, and you guys probably can't see this, but it does say that on the dipstick here. For this one it says idle in neutral, do not overfill, use Mopar ATF +4. So when we start up the vehicle, that's something you can come back and have a look at. And there you go. Okay. So once you're done there, like I said, like battery, check your fluid levels, battery for condition, power steering, power brakes, fluid level reservoirs, your coolant and your overflow and your rad, air filter, engine oil, transmission oil, general condition down in here. You can have a look at your rad as well, just making sure you don't see any leaks of any kind. So you'd see green fluid most likely. And then you've got your AC condenser and your transmission cooler, so you'd see, well, on the transmission side you might see a little bit of red for your ETF. Once you're done in there, that's pretty much it for engine wise. And so before we jump in and kind of look at things, one thing you want to look at is, which I forgot to do when I was looking at this truck. As you can see, there's pretty significant rust around the wheel well, and this was hidden under Bondo and paint. And what I forgot to bring with me was my magnet. So if you have a magnet, it'll stick to the body. Use something smaller than this. But if you have Bondo down in here, it's not going to stick. So if you bring a magnet with you and you kind of run it along the body, around the wheel wells, your cab corners, your rocker panels, that'll tell you if somebody's Bondoed it. So before we work into the interior, we'll come down underneath and have a look at underneath the vehicle. So to start off, you know, condition, looking for serious rust, drips, any fluid leaking, stuff like that. So underneath here is not too bad. There's some surface scale going on. You can see a little bit of rust along here on the surface, but nothing eaten all the way through. Looking up front here, so you want to start looking at your drivetrain. CV axles, this axle that runs from your front diff all the way up. These are often ripped in the boots, so make sure you're wearing old clothes and get in here and open up these ribs. Make sure that there's no splits in there. You'll know because there's big globs of grease that'll fall out of there if they are broke. Make sure it's all closed up to your front diff well, and then same thing applies to the other side. Check out that CV axle over there. Now your struts, if the bottom part of your strut here looks wet, your shock might be done for, or broken anyway. So it leaked all the fluid out of there, so just watch for that. These are dry, so they're either bone dry and they've been for a long time, or there's actually still some fluid in there. Up in here you can look at your lower ball joint. Up top here your upper ball joint. So this is your lower control arm, this right here. That's what your strut goes down into. And then up top there, right there, that's your upper control arm. So you can have a peek at all those things. You're looking for your boots here. Let me spin around. This boot, it should be shouldn't be cracked or ripped or anything. It should be nice and solid. You can see like it's squishing out a little bit. That's because there's lots of grease in there. I tried to keep these fairly greased. That's about it. Underneath in the front here, you can have a look down the length of the frame, looking for any weird buckles or twists, because you can get a vehicle that has been straightened. So just have a look down the frame. Should be fairly uniform. For about the same amount of rust, just the surface scale type thing. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. And okay, we'll slide under over here. So, one thing you can have a look at is your exhaust. Oops, I zoomed all the way in. So one thing you can have a peek at is your exhaust. That's going to be likely where you're going to see the most rust on a vehicle. So you can see it's pretty rusty, but no holes. And then, oh, wait a minute. That's not good. So that mount, get it? Yep. That mount is supposed to be there. So that exhaust is just hanging loose. And then keep going back, and uh-oh, missing part of the exhaust. So yeah, if your exhaust looks like that, that's not good. For basic walk around, looking for a used vehicle, that's pretty much the big points, I would say. So then you would move on to your interior and go through that list and go from there. If you're gonna get a used vehicle, ideally, like if you started up and the temperature gauge is already reading, I'd be a little bit cautious, because maybe the previous owner knows it doesn't like to start when it's cold and they kind of warmed it up before you got there. So if you jump in, turn the key forward and the temperature's up and they didn't just drive it to meet you for your walk around, then I'd question it. If it's just sitting in the yard and you turn the key on, the temperature's already up, then maybe let it cool down and see what it does. But yeah, move on to the interior and then go from there. Alright, so that's pretty much exterior done. So once you're in here, what you're going to want to do is turn your key forward. I'll test all my lights. So you put your headlights on, your high beams, your signal lights both sides, and you're just checking to make sure that they're turning on. So you might have to turn them on and just walk around the vehicle to make sure that they're on in the front and the back. Four ways, test those, and then it's a good idea to go through and test as much of the electronics as you can. So what actually happened to me when I bought this truck was, in the HVAC system, one of the doors that directs heat to the floor was broken. So I had to take the dash apart and replace that door after I got sick of my feet being freezing during hunting season. So what I would do, so you test your lights, your signals, all that stuff, and then I would start it up. So when you start it up, you're listening for, you know, a good clean start, not too many cranks, and a nice idle. Once that's on, you want to test your horn, test the radio, you know, test all your speakers, go left and right, front and back. If you have a nav system or GPS system, you want to test all that too, make sure it's giving you good stuff. Test your fan, so go fan to high, go hot. Well, first you might want to test the AC side of things, so AC, test that, make sure it's blowing cold air. Go through all your stations, so like your all your vents, so your windshield defrost, your forward vents here that go towards your upper body, your feet vents, you know, stick your hand under, make sure that you're getting cold air down there, or air in general. And once the truck has warmed up a little bit, then you can test your heat. So again, go from AC, go to heat, full hot, and make sure it's blowing hot air. You don't really have to test all the vents again, because once you did that on the AC side, then your AC, like all your vents are good. What else in here before you get going? General cleanliness and condition. Test your seats. This one was weird. It's actually, the seat was all banged up or something, so it doesn't adjust properly. It goes front and back, but the lean doesn't work. So test the lean on the seat, make sure it goes front and back, and make sure you're testing on all the seats available. The mirror in the passenger side sun visor in this is smashed for some reason. So again, like looking at weird things that you wouldn't think to look at, have a look at inside your sun visor's general condition, because I didn't think to flip that down, and if I saw that, I would be like concerned. Again, if I tested the seat, I would be, why is this seat not working right? So I feel like this vehicle was in some sort of accident where things were worked on, replaced, because I can't explain why that mirror would be broken over there, why that seat would work the way it does. And then, you know, the floor heat not working. So I might have not bought this truck had I tested those things properly. Once you get going, if you're going for an actual test drive, test the telescoping use of your steering wheel. Once you get going, you know, you're looking for a nice firm brake, good acceleration, and then if you're buying something with four-wheel drive, you're going to want to test all the four-wheel drive aspects, 4 high, 4 low, etc. Once you do your test drive, you know, everything should check out. If you go over that list that we talked about, power windows, power doors, test all the power windows, all the power doors, power mirrors, stuff like that, test them, make sure they work. Because if you walk out of there with something broken, you're going to have a hard time trying to convince whoever you bought it from that it was broken when you bought it and that you wanted it fixed. Or if you're buying private, that's if you're buying from a dealership. If you're buying private, they're going to be like, oh, whatever, I don't care, most of the time. So if you're not testing all these things, then that's just stuff that you're going to have to test on later or fix later.